This is the official beginning. I always got to have official beginning. Welcome to... Let me start again, DM Hokey. Welcome to Ultimate Sensei, where I give to unsuspecting...
Not Ultimate. That's another show.
That's enough. Let's start again, DM
Take
Hokey.
three.
Take three. Welcome to Endgame Sensei, where I give to unsuspecting... Now, let's start again, DM Hokey. Yeah. Come on, let's start again. Welcome to Endgame Sensei, where I give two fools an endgame position that they will botch. It will make my hair go white. It'll ruin my day, but maybe they'll learn something from it. Probably not. Here we go. This is from a game I played recently. Oof. I won't even disclose.
I'm sorry for you, Jesse.
I won't even disclose what color I was. I was definitely not sorry about my experience. I'm going to have the two idiots give their view on the position. And we're doing a poll here if you want to put your own response to what you think is going on. And then what we're going to do is they're going to play it out. They're going to mute their mics when they do so. And I'll give my own 2 cents about what I think is going on. The only thing let me just stress is, David already, and maybe some of you think, oh, I know what's going on here. Well, let's give it a second. Just give it a second. This one's not so easy. Okay, but Mr. Proust, since you had the first instant recognition or understanding, intuition about this position, why don't you go first? What is your sense?
My sense is you were probably black and drew against the 2100.
Uh-huh. And what's your sense of the position?
A white's better. Okay,
why and what kinds of things should white be doing, and how much better is white?
How much better? 0.75.
Okay, and why is white better?
What should white be doing? It's not easy to make progress for white. I'm not sure what I'll do if I end up with the white pieces here, other than eventually win somehow. How to explain? I guess white could maybe eventually expand on the king side. Is that fair to say? Yeah, white could expand on the king side maybe if black sits around doing nothing as well, which is probably a good policy for black. I think a lot of times the players with black try and do something in a position like this, and then they make things much worse for themselves. So the first thing I would do in a position like this as white is do nothing and see if my opponent makes things worse for themselves.
That's good to know.
So, play like some mysterious move like rook c1, and then see if black's like, oh, I better go b5, or just let them do something. Maybe they'll play knight d3, maybe they'll play knight e4, maybe they'll play knight a4. You can always hope that your opponent's just going to lose the game for you, because at a non-grandmaster level, that's what they tend to do.
Do not follow anything that these people say. Okay? This is my endgame sensei word. You listen to them, don't listen. Don't listen. When they start saying folio things like that, just close it up. Just close off the ears as if you heard nothing. Ghosty, what do you got for me in this position, buddy?
Okay, well, let me just say, I know I generally don't play well on this show. I'm not trying to dispute that, but I did just win my second open tournament in a row. And I had multiple end games in the event, so I just want to say that it is helping me in my regular games.
Okay, good.
I'm very pleased to be doing this.
All right, good.
As far as the position, I'm with David. I'm mostly, being a French player and not much of an e4 player, I usually saw these positions from black's point of view. Sometimes I would win, sometimes not. They're generally unpleasant because white does have... The problem is the light squared bishop for me, really. Like this bishop on d7, if we could just trade it off for any piece, then I would actually take black. I would be fine. But yeah, the problem is the bishop is bad, and it's hard to fix that. So it's kind of just a long-term practical advantage for white. Even like, yeah, the engine might even say like equal about some position, but yeah, in practice, it's always kind of two results for white.
And I didn't really get a clear answer from David about what he thought the dynamics were, and I might come back to him. But what dynamics do you see?
I thought I gave you more information than ever before, but
Well,
I mean,
wait. Well, let's let Kostya go, and I'll come back to you.
okay.
About the dynamics of the position?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Usually I think of
Say
dynamics
whatever
as,
obvious thing comes to your mind about what you think is happening.
well, I think white is better,
Okay.
again, because of the bishop.
Okay.
Good knight on d4. More space. Is that what you meant? Usually I think of dynamics, just kind of like tactical ideas.
I'm saying you can delve. You can say more, and I think it's
Oh, okay.
helpful to say more. Like you can say space, but okay, say more. What are we talking about? Or what? Yeah, what kind of things are both sides going to be looking for?
If black didn't have the bad bishops, they would normally have counterplay on the c file in a position like this. So in Kostya's sort of like dream scenario where black was able to trade their light squared bishop for either white's knight or bishop, which is a position which Kostya and I have each had with black sometimes, in the French. Sometimes we've traded off that piece. You get an advanced variation. You play b6, bishop a6 or something, whatever. It happens. If you didn't have that bishop, then black would have counterplay on the c file, like massive counterplay. They'd have options, to try and put a piece on e4 or c4 to attack the c pawn. If white plays c3, they can sometimes play b5, b4 and do sort of a minority attack on the queen side. And one of the big plans for white in the French defense is f5, which has different degrees of potency in the middle game versus in the end game, but it's like the major pawn break for white, I would say, right, Kostya?
Yeah, pushing f5, right.
Okay, good. I'll talk more about what I see is happening in the position when you guys go silent. We'll talk about it a little bit more when we come back. And then, are you guys ready to
No, I
play it
gotta
out?
grab something.
All right, he's gonna grab something. This will give me a half a second to do the tech part of today's show, which I always screw up anyway. Let's let David go first because he was so confident. All right.
All right, my apologies.
No problem. All right. Are you guys in the live chess?
Mm-hmm.
David, are you in the live chess?
Yep.
All right, here we go. Boom. All right, my friends, there they are. And yeah. Okay, so, and I have to make sure I have, sometimes I mess, I'm going to have to, I lost my windows. I lost my windows. I don't know how they work. There we go. Oh, I fixed my windows. That's always a pleasure. Oh, I didn't get to fix Kostya's window, though. He's a real jerk. Ah. All right, I'm going to have to do a new window for Kostya for his time, because people like to have the time. Maybe, let's just make sure here. No, it's not working. It's all right. Let me grab this time here of Mr. Kostya. Roop. Roop. The boomer GM, tech wizard that he is grabbing the time. All right, so there it is. Boom. So this was a game I had in my recent tournament. I was black, and I was playing one of these kids, very talented FM young guy, very theoretical. When I was able to look at his games for like a half an hour before the round, very tactical. And there were a couple things that were interesting to me about the choice of the opening. One, I wanted to get a position where I could just play and I didn't have to worry about some theoretical stuff. I also had the understanding that the position, at least from the classical point of view, i.e. pre-computer, and the computer's point of view was that white was better. I would say the classical point of view, pre-computer, would be that white is slightly better. And then the computer I knew loved white's position. I think it might have flirted even with a clear advantage. And I wanted to win the game, and so David was saying a joke of like, you had it against the 2100, and then you were able to hold a draw. No, I won this game. I won this game. And part of the challenge for white is what to do. And then I had some ideas of how to play for black as well. And you can see what David is doing is he's doing these small moves with G3 and H3, which aren't terrible. I'm not a huge fan of Kostya's rook AC8, but I don't like it. But it doesn't ruin anything. Kostya does need, obviously, to find a plan now. What did you think about the position during the game? Well, I had analyzed it, for a little bit before the game. And so my sense was that white was slightly better, and it made me nervous because I knew that the computer thought it was clearly better. And it's a weird psychological thing about openings is that the computer has its own opinions about, about the position that aren't necessarily human. And one thing, we've talked about it on the show before, is the modern computer loves the bishops more than the old timers did. And it loves the space advantage, which white has. So, I can't talk to the machine's algorithm, but if I did, I think what it would tell me basically is the reason it likes white is because of the space advantage. Now, I do think f5 is a very committal move that is poor. And the reason is that what black is thinking when he plays this move is that his knight will get the e4 square. But the problem with that thinking is that the knight never wants, this is very important when we talk about dynamics actually, and I'll say more about the small things that I think are important in the position. When we talk about dynamics, one of the key things to see is that it's kind of like when you have, let's say, two bishops, and one of the bishops is bad and one is good. If you trade off your good bishop, your bad bishop is going to look really, really terrible. And so similarly to here, you cannot trade the knight at all. Just forget about it. Do not trade the knight. And that's the obvious problem here with f5 is you're thinking that someday knight e4. Why else would you play f5? But now no puedo, because I'll take the knight and be at least clearly better, arguably winning. So white has now got a huge position. And the threat, I think, would be h4, h5, busting it open. One very basic thing that they did not, for example, say is that because of the French structure and the pointing of the pawns, black's play is on the queen side, and white's play is generally on the king side. How that kingside play happens is very difficult, honestly. And they mentioned f5, the break f5. And something I want to say about that break is it doesn't actually, it's not as powerful as it might seem because it doesn't lead to a mating attack. And the e5 pawn becomes very weak when you do play f5. So I think Kostya's, he's stinking up the dojo. Kostya's stinking up the dojo over here. Now, that said, I still think there's always practical chances in a position like this. So it's gone from a slightly bad position to now one where white is going to be able to really penetrate on the king side. And let's say this is a moment now for David to contemplate how to proceed. There is GF followed by H5, but the more aggressive move that I'm sure he's thinking about is, can I simply play H5? It seems like he should be able to play H5. Now, let me move this out of the way. Yeah, Dave's got loads of time, too. All right. One of the things you can see from Kostya's play is he didn't have a sense of the position. And he kind of like assumed the position, if I'm allowed to put it like that, right? Like he's just going to go into a crouch and hide. And of course, the pawns are on the wrong color, i.e. the color of his bishop. And more importantly, actually, than the color is they're allowing white to open up a front now against his king. Yeah, so this looks difficult. I don't think it's technically lost yet, but it is very difficult now for Kostya. Question from chat, which I kind of already said or hinted on. Didn't black worsen his bishop with f5 g6? And yes, the answer is yes, he did. But I think in his mind, he is assuming the position, right? He is going to like maybe play bishop, I don't know what he's going to do, but maybe bishop e8 with the idea of, trying to create some kind of fortressy-like thing. Yeah. And yeah, so this will be one of the things to see about the position is that even when things go bad for black, that it's still not so easy. Now, a dynamic that I wanted to, one of the many dynamics that I think we can talk about from the very beginning is that the word space advantage is certainly, a relevant thing to say. But where it gets interesting is that the e5 pawn makes black's king immobile, right? It's hard for the black king to be active. Contrast that to the white king, and the white king really, and I think this is important to our current position as well. The white king, however, has dreams on the dark squares, both towards the king side and towards the queen side. And so I think whatever part of white's plan we have here should be, hey, white, you should go and do something with your king over there. Now, knight e4, it's a sad-looking move, and white has two options now, to play king e3 and to play bishop takes e4. Now, you might say, Jesse, didn't you just say you're going to take the knight? Well, it's certainly good to take the knight, but notice the knight isn't going anywhere if we play king e3. We can take it at our leisure. And yeah, this looks terrible. This looks terrible. Yeah. We got questions about my heating situation. It's been cold recently, but I got my little office. I don't have the heat on in general, but I got the space heater on. So, it's turning, summer is slowly coming. I think this weekend's going to be cold. All right, now let me just say it was a very committal decision for David to take on e4. And the reason for not taking is that black at least has a dream now to activate his bishop at some point with bishop c6. Right. So I don't know if there was a problem with king e3. I didn't see it, but here we are. And one of the things to see about that bishop on d7 is it fits the profile of the bad piece. And what I mean by the profile is the bad piece is a lot like a prisoner who's been in a jail cell for just like decades. And in that jail cell, he's been pumping iron, and he's been getting really, really angry. And the reason the metaphor is good is that once the thing gets, if it ever comes out, it's going to be very vicious. And a French player will always be looking to sack a pawn, e3 maybe even, to get that guy some space, right? So white's doing still great, but now is a critical move for going forward. Yeah. For example, if he plays gf, we're going to say black playing gf would be the first thought that comes to mind. But even ef is not so dumb with the idea of playing bishop e6. Now, what this move king e3 shows me is that he should have just played king e3 first, right? The knight wasn't going anywhere. All right, so now big moment for Mr. Kostya. Let's flip the board for a second and ponder his life. White's played it a little. I feel like he had a very substantial advantage, maybe winning, and now I'm not 100%. But Kostya, nevertheless, has to come up with a move right now. And there we got bishop e8. It's certainly a thought. Bishop c6 would have kind of been interesting as well, I think. Bishop c6 would have been, let's call it, an active move. And at some point, I think white wants to just very simply play c4. And at some point, maybe even move the knight so that the king can think about the d4 square, right? He will have the opportunity. It's a real challenge, by the way. So imagine you want to create a passed pawn over there, but at the same time, you do not want to open the position in any way for black's bishop. Well, let's flip the board again. Consider it from white's point of view. Question, are these positions from Van Perlo's book? This position is from a game I played. I was black, not this particular one, but the beginning position, where I was playing one of these young and talented FM kids that I just wanted a nice, pleasant endgame position. And I was black. And I managed to win, and maybe I'll show the game later. But first of all, I just wanted to see how these guys handled it. Now, H takes, I don't know. I wasn't 100% on H takes. But maybe Mr. Proust has a follow-up after rook H7 here. We're about to find out. Like maybe if rook F7, he can say that rook, well, I don't know. Maybe rook H6. Rook F7, rook H6. And at any point, black should certainly be considering giving up a pawn if he can loose the bishop. Loose the kraken. Okay, rook H6, good. My instinct is this might be fine. I thought also in addition to HG, HG, GF, GF, H6 would have been annoying for black as well. So white is claiming that now that black's position is jammed and that GF is a tactical threat. Okay. Now, as we've seen, Kostya has been assuming the position. He's been assuming the position all day long. It's very passive. It's very passive. Ugh, it's a little ugly. Now, maybe there's a hope for Kostya to play G5 himself to loose the rooks. So, for example, if black plays G5 and white goes GF, there's GF. Now, it doesn't even work because the E6 pawn is hanging. But even so, white playing G5 here would be a very pleasant advantage. And it's got to be said that at this point, it's not the bishop that black should be sad about. It's the rooks. The rooks are looking gross. Now, there's no rush to play G5, so a move like C4 would be a fine building move for white, too. And if we go back here, it'll be interesting for us to see if there was a more dynamic way for black to play this, because this is just a little depressing. Yeah, it's true though. It's nasty. We're in officially nasty territory now. Okay. Yeah, it's officially nasty. So I think now is when David needs to start playing building moves. So G5 or C4 both look strong here for white. If Rook G7, as Pumpkin the fat cat is saying, then we have to wonder about GF simply, right? Because if GF, then this guy's falling. And if this way, then this guy's falling. And it would be a bummer to lose that particular pawn. I was thinking maybe sack a pawn with FG. That's not so special. And we still don't really solve our problems. So I don't know about that. But that would be a thought. Because, if you just losing a pawn, if you like it would be FG, Rook G4, let's say Bishop C6. If you can get activity, you might not lose the game. One of the things I wanted to go back to, actually, is just a thought, is the king on E7. We were talking about him. I think it's critical to understand that if white has an advantage, it's in the fact that his king is potentially better than black's king. And one of the things about it, the black king, though, is he definitely has chances to be active from a defensive standpoint on the king side. What we can see here, though, is he's just in Bummerville. He's just in Bummerville because he's lost control of the dark squares. The E6 pawn is loose. Oh, man. In fact, if I want to go back here, it was already, I thought, I wanted Kostya to play something, at least an attempt to be active with a move like Bishop C6 or maybe even GH here. Yeah. Main thing with the bishop is to say to yourself, even if I lose a pawn, as long as I get active, I have good chances for survival, right? Okay, so here we go. A3. Okay, good. Yeah, this is very unpleasant for black. Very unpleasant. Yeah, when you stink up the dojo, yeah, it's no good. It was good to hear that Kostya, he has had a couple good results recently. And so it's good to hear that he feels, at least, that my punishing him, my punishing him with all my rude comments is something that he feels is helping his life. Always good to hear that kind of thing. All right. So, with this move, king f7, black is kind of sort of hinting that maybe his rook on g8 could move. And white is looking for a tactical breakthrough. Does, for example, gf work out? Maybe. Knight b3 is a move. We can think about c5. And the white king should definitely be dreaming of going all the way downtown to like b6. Okay. That could be definitely a dream for white. Okay, rook d1, fine. King e7. If white wants to just chill out and play g5 at any point, fine. And black should always, every move should be thinking about playing fg there. In fact, maybe even the last move might not have been completely dumb. Again, if you sack the pawn, but then imagine it, you play fg and then bishop c6, it's going to be hard not to take that bishop eventually. That's going to be one of the active ways for black to try to improve his lot here. Uh-oh, Mr. Proust, don't lose on time, buddy. One of the things about Endgame Sensei from the very beginning has been to try to train ourselves to move at this newfangled time control where you got 30 seconds to move. And in particular, to achieve zen about it. And what I mean by that is, back in the day, we used to use these analog clocks where your flag would be like literally hanging. And if your opponent slapped the clock really hard, you didn't know if your flag was going to fall or not. And so it was just a constant state of terror. I'm going to come back to that. But Kostya does play g5, and whether or not it works, we're going to call it ideologically correct, because he needs to do something pronto. And fixing the rooks is a good thing. Now notice, earlier I said that white could play g5 just so he didn't have to worry about it anymore and have a clear advantage. might have been a good thought, because now maybe black has some counterplay. We're about to find out. In any case, let me just finish the thought with the 30 seconds. With a 30-second delay, what you get is, or you can achieve, let's say, is a kind of zen state where you aren't freaked out about losing on time, and you are mentally allowing yourself to go down to 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds without just losing your mind. Back in the day, we couldn't even imagine it. It was too much. It was too much, man. And so for an old timer, especially like myself, this new skill is an important one to learn. Okay. So, I don't want him, knight f5 might work, but I don't want him to do it. I think king d5 is the manly man's move, and so he just needs to make sure it works, king d5. Definitely, it looks it looks pretty powerful. Mr. King d5 does, yeah. There it goes. And Mr. Proust, now, besides all the arrogance that he brought to the table with this current Endgame Sensei, where he felt he understood the position, he's played several good endings in our latest Endgame Sensei. And this one, there was a couple of moves I didn't like. But this position, beautiful, a real beaut. Yeah, it's hard to know even what to do for black here. So for example, if rook g2, which would be your active move, then we go snip, snop, and e6, and that looks painful. Yeah, that looks painful. So, and then if you lose f5 with check or something nasty, not what we wanted. Maybe rook rook g6 will play rook h7. Doesn't look good. On rook d8, good question. I'm assuming that rook d6 will come. and will still be threatening e6. But if I was white, rook d8 is in fact the move that I would fear most, just because I don't know what else black is going to do, right? I don't know what else he's going to do. Yeah, and let's just say beyond e6, there's the positional threat of king c5 to king b6, which is also really a bummer. So after rook d8, Proust has, I guess the big move for the first question would be, does rook d8 win on the spot? Excuse me, rook d6 win on the spot. That's what he plays. I think if he didn't like that for whatever reason, that king c5 also looked very tasty. We were talking, someone's mentioning bishop a4, but the bishop cannot move from the f5 square because of ye old knight takes f5. Now, is there some way to get counterplay? All right, rook g3 comes. And one hope for black here is that if e6, bishop c6, knight takes, bishop check, pawn takes, let's say king takes, that the hope would be that that f pawn is going to roll. Now, is it really going to roll? Well, at least it's a hope. At rook h2, good move. Good move. Oh, that's a good move, man. Just rook h7 next. And if bishop c6, don't even take it, dude. Just play king c5. Don't even, because the knight is looking at f5 too. What a drag. Oh man, this is terrible. I really like rook h2, man. That's a good move. Maybe, I don't know, you know what to do. Rook g7. It's an unpleasant situation. Yeah. One of the reasons I wanted to look at this game, king c5, very nice, is that, you know, I go over my games. I try to go over them with a lot of detail. And this game in particular, I had trouble analyzing it in the sense that the very beginning position, you know, there's so many different moves a white could do. I didn't want to, I'll look at the computer later, but I didn't want to look at the computer right away. And it was very hard for me to articulate like exactly what white should do. Whereas black's next couple moves from that beginning position, I feel are a lot clearer. All right. Rook h7 looks deadly, dude. Just deadly. Rook h7, rook f7, knight takes f5, check to the miserable king. Adios, muchacho. Rook h7, king e8, knight e6. Adios, muchacho. That's it. Good night. It's literally a good night. I'm sorry about the puns. This time control is 5 minutes with 30 seconds delay, and my game was 90 minutes and 40 moves with 30 seconds delay, and then we got another bit of time at move 40, however, did not last until move 40. All right, so unless I'm missing something entirely, 96 is fini. Well, I guess maybe you could try to play 96 rook f7. But my friends, this is over. Finito de la commedia. Kostya never resigns, though. He should resign, and then we can do other fun things here at the dojo. But he never does. He never does. He never resigns. All right. No, it's true. Mr. Proust needs to find the most clinical He doesn't have to find the most clinical. He could do any number of things, but he does need to move in the next 15 seconds. We do know that much. Lots of good moves. Of course, you could be a little terrified about f3 from black coming. You shouldn't be, but you could be. And now white's he's got it all the dreams. Now I think you got to play like rook f7. It's hard to imagine a different move, man. If king d8 will play e6, you know. Oh. So rook f7. Oof. Unpleasant for a peasant. Rook f7, I mean, it's just nasty. Yeah. Rook f7, rook c8, king d7, e6 check to the miserable king. King takes e6, rook c6, we're winning the rook. So it's all the way gone. Merles, that might be true, but this one looks like the end. Now, after rook d3, this is fine what David's doing. Oh, yeah, forget about it. Forget about it. Fini, Kostya, resign, buddy. You're making me go bald here. I'm already bald, man. My hair's already gone white. You don't need to do this to me. It's not necessary. It's not necessary to do it to me, buddy. Laddered. Yeah. I've never used that as a verb, but I like it. Laddered. Buddy, you are laddered. Yeah. I get it. Kostya's not going to resign until like the F-pawns are gone or something. And now we could gain time by playing rook a6. Rook d6 does win. You take back with the king, and on f3 you just play rook h3 and laugh, pick up all the pawns. That would be El Simplicimus way of doing things. Maybe that's what we're going to get. I like the king, but I'm sure you could take with the pawn too. There's nothing better than drinking a little coffee on a... Now, Proust is a maximalist, dude. Like, king takes was the simpler way. He's a maximalist. All right, so now we're anticipating rook h3, unless Mr. Proust wants to get super fancy and play king c6, but I don't want him to. That's too fancy. Too fancy, buddy. We don't want any part of that. Just play rook h3, boss. Connect 4 automatically wins. That's right. Hey, that was a recent thing somebody said. Connect 4. I really like it. I got the Connect 4. Kostya's thinking up the dojo. Yep. Black's winning, yeah. Well, Kostya, time to resign, buddy. Stinking up the dojo. Now, it's got to be said. Let's just say this, that Mr. Proust has, in general, if you look at the stats, he's been schooling Kostya. All right, don't tell him I said it. Don't tell him. All right, here we go. We don't want to give him a big head. Match. Hello, Kostya. And then D. Proust. Fine. 30. You guys ready to run it back?
Okay.
Okay. Boom. All right, here it comes. Oh, has it started? Wait, something weird happened. There it goes. Okay, great. Let me make sure I got the various things. I got to change up the clocks. Whoop. Watch. This is when you're like a Zoomer skills seminar I'm giving you guys here, how to switch the clocks. You like that? Okay. And in fact, I should have fixed this before, but I'm going to fix it now. And we're going to say Kostya is white. Sometimes it's confusing. Yeah, it is confusing because the Zoom things are not switched up as they were before. Okay. Does it feel worse when they blow up my position? No, I don't mind. What was interesting to me about it actually is that, what? Oh, they do this to me all the time. Talk about making my hair go white here. So let's do it again. This is when chess.com, when you set up one of these matches and they don't move fast enough, it goes bad. So let's do that again. Boom. I'm hoping that's working now. All right, so there we go. Rook AE1. Yeah. What I was going to say is when they were talking about it, in the discussion of dynamics, it was almost like they were talking in a way where it was like as if it didn't matter, or they were just saying like stuff that more abstract. Like we could say the word space, we could say the word bad bishop. But like I'm saying, I think you need to understand the part about black being essentially the queen side of the board, and the black king being bad. I think that's key to any winning attempt by white, is that not only that, but we have then the dark squares. It's really important for white to say, I want the dark squares, right? And it's one of the reasons that whenever you play knight takes bishop, that white will really own the dark squares then. And we saw it in the game too when Kostya played knight e4. Now, knight a4 I did not like as a move, because it suggests that black thinks he can just sit and do nothing. b3 is in fact an improvement for white. And one of the moves he can think about, especially with the rook on a1, less so now, but is a4. Because black needs to understand that he needs both counterplay and just some space over there on the queen side. Ideally, we would like to play our pawns on the dark squares. b5, b4, and a5, for example. That would be our dream for the sake of our bishop, but also for the sake of our space. Just because it's an endgame doesn't mean that we don't have a side of the board, Yeah. Well, we're talking about light square bishops in the chat. White's light square bishop definitely stronger than ours, just in terms of scope, right? In fact, let's count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's 6, That's not too terrible. And then we counter that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Holy moly. So 6 to 10, somebody do some math and some ratios, but it's almost 2 to 1. Okay, now one of the things about the position that's really interesting is in the pre-computer age, I'm going to say circa, maybe, it wasn't quite pre-computer, but I remember a friend telling me around the year 2000 about this position. He was like, dude, it's a draw. It's a draw because h5, you play h5, and you wait for g4 to come, and if it happens, you can snip and play g6. You're never going to lose that position. And I've always been, there's a lot of GMs, much stronger than me, that will use that expression. It's a draw. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies. It always gives me the heebie-jeebies because I'm like, well, when I do it, it's never a draw. And when I watch other people's games, it's never a draw. So I always get confused when they say that, like as if you could say the beginning position. If you want to say that's a draw, fine. It doesn't help me to call it a draw. By the beginning position, I just mean at the very beginning of every chess game, right? In any case, that was one of the features of the understanding, and we're going to see it, maybe if I show the game that I played, that one of the issues for white is when you play g4, you activate the rook on h8, right? And if you don't play g4, what are you doing? And then, so I think if white wants to, I mean, honestly, I was struggling with it for how to play it exactly for white. But my sense is that you need to be playing on both sides. And so a little bit of spatial grab on the queen side, and then a little bit of threatening to come in with the king on the queen side. But I don't actually have a very clear path for white about how he's supposed to play. Whereas I think black should be playing a6, b5, for sure, just for space. And a4, I think, is actually at least a problem for black now. Because if black plays a6, well, I think we should certainly play a5, or at least definitely think about it. Yeah. Right. Now, I think both of these guys as black don't understand what to do, so they're just kind of shuffling their pieces. And so it's not the most inspiring thing to watch it like that. And they're just kind of waiting to see what white's going to do. In the game as well, I played one of the moves I'm actually wondering about, when I played it. I played a rook c8 at some point, and it was almost like, are you sure, buddy? Like, is the rook actually doing anything over there? In any case, I want to say it's critical that black now doesn't have a6, b5, or at least it's not easy for me to understand how he has a6, b5. All right, now Kostya commits to g4. And one interesting move here for black would be to play rook h6. And the question that white then gets is, do I want to play g5? If I do not play g5, black will take next move and play rook over. One of the things to observe is that f5 in all these positions isn't that special for white. Okay, Proust is assuming the position. Now, I think when they assume the position, it kind of suggests that they really are pessimistic about black's chances. I think g6 is plausible, though. And where I'm not sure about it, though, is you are giving white now the opportunity. Well, white definitely can think about playing f5 right now. Does it work? Is it special? Good question. But at least it's something that black has to worry about. With the pawn on g7, it's less of a worry because there's no f6 check that I need to worry about. If the pawn's on g7 and you play f5, well, it's unclear exactly what you're doing, right? So Mr. Kostya can think about f5. Instead plays rook rook to 1. Now, maybe rook h6 now. Rook h7, I suppose, also now possible. And the f5 question was really hanging in the air. Now, one of the things that's very obvious, but it needs to be stated. When you play f5, you activate the bishop on d7. Now, I'm sure some of you are like, dude, we got it, Cry. We could see it. Well, it's one of the things where I think my phrase pawns aren't people really comes up, because I think the way they were describing it with the pawn break, I knew that they were going to say that. And it's true that white wants the option of the pawn break, but there's a lot of liabilities with f5, including helping the black bishop. So one of the ways, broadly speaking, with the pawns aren't people statement that I've got is that if you are focused on, like, if you say, in this position I want to do X and Y pawn breaks, then you're not thinking about the pieces, because the pawn breaks are there to help the pieces. And this particular pawn break has the distinct possibility of helping black. Now, if black had had rook h6 here, Then he could play rook h8. That would be great. But now, of course, he doesn't. And that's a good thing for white. That's a very good thing for white. So hg was a concession. Okay, bishop c6 is at least interesting. I don't get it entirely, but maybe black could think about playing b6 and bishop b7. He cannot play b6 next move because knight c6 would win a piece, but maybe that's an intention. It does, of course, just give white the move. If white wants to make a good building move, he could play king e3. He goes for it, though, and does this. I'm not sure, Kostya. I'm not sure you wanted to do this, buddy. Now, what is true is that bishop c6 made it so that ef is no longer such a big thing. I don't think I like what Kostya did. He did a pawns are people thing. He did a pawns are people thing. Because now black's getting active. Oh, Kostya's stinking up the dojo. Nota bene, the pawn on e5 is now a liability. So at any point, you have to be worried about knight d7. Of course, and the obvious one is you got to be worried about rook g2. And is f6 special? Check. I don't think so. Is ef, and some kind of rook f6 special? I don't see it. And so this liquidation over here, I think it helped black more than anything else. Yeah, Kostya, buddy, pawns aren't people, bro. Not people. Not people. Some people going as far to say black is better. Maybe. I like to constrain my optimism a little bit. I like to constrain it. Now, choice for black. King d8 would reserve the d7 square for the knight. So we might want to do it. He goes f8. f8's maybe fine. It makes me hella nervous, though, because later you could get mated, right? So why are we putting the king over there, boss? Daddy doesn't quite understand that one. I didn't like king f8. However, it does present some simple questions about knight d7 still and rook g2. Yeah, I didn't like king f8, because now when you go rook g2, what are you going to do about your h-rook, boss? Buddy. Maybe king c3 now for white. As I said, white needs to be dreaming about making the king better. a5 is also a very simple move that he could play. Can you help explain what you mean with pawns aren't people? Yes. By the way, we've got this beautiful merch shop up at ChessDojo, at our ChessDojo website. And there you can buy a mug and or a score sheet, score book with the phrase, pawns aren't people. And now, first, before I answer that question, we got a different one. Was king d8, rook g7 a problem? You might mean rook h7. I don't see why that's a problem. We take and go rook g2, check. Also, I wanted the king over there because maybe white is going to start doing some of his own business to me over on the queen side. All right, big moment though. There's a simple problem for white. The black is betting everything on knight d7, defending the e5 pawn. So we do need a move here. Does, for example, b4 work? Okay, great question. Great question. So now Kostya's going for tactics, and it might work. The obvious problem is if knight d7, then b5. And then white has two other variations to calculate. Knight d3. Actually, a couple of variations. Knight d3, followed by bishop a4, and knight a4 directly. And in all of those variations, you got to be wondering about rook g2 check, throwing that bad boy in. Right? It's getting a little spicy, my friends. All right, a little spicy. Now, pawns aren't people. Let's address the question. Put simply, as a coaching forever and coaching myself, analyzing my games, when you look at a position and you don't have a clue about what's going on, which is the case, it's not just that lower rated players have that problem. Everybody's got the problem. The first inclination can be to start thinking about pawns. Can I win a pawn? Can I damage the pawn structure? What is the pawn break in the position? Those are the things that the mind first leaps to. And it's important to see that pawn breaks and pawn structure is secondary to piece activity. And a better way of saying it is your pawn, it's not like the pawns are unimportant, but your pawns are there to make your pieces better and your opponent's pieces worse. A lot of times people are like, "Cry, what do you mean? Philidor said that pawns are the soul of chess. Why are you maligning the pawns, buddy? Not maligning the pawns. They have a place in society. It's not like they're unimportant. The issue is more that you need to realize that they are secondary to the piece activity. Right. Another way, actually, somebody in the dojo chat, unfortunately I don't remember names that well, said it well in saying that another way of saying it, pawns aren't people, is to say that pawns are not protagonists. They are not the protagonists in the drama. We got a simple comment. Black's king is in a mating net. Yes, that was the problem with king f8. King f8 was a terrible move. Now, this b4, I don't know if it works. I don't know. We have now, Kosi has now started the tactics, and Black has several moves here at his disposal. Rook g2, knight a4, knight d3, and knight a4 and knight d3 can also be done after rook g2. The problem with rook g2, of course, is because the king is a mating net, you're going to have to, after rook g2, you're going to have to take on h1 and then worry about rook h8. That is our little grief. b4, the idea of b4 is not only to create grief for Black, but to stop Black from playing knight d7, which was Mr. Pruse's hope to gain counterplay in this position. So, all right, let's try to do a little bit of analysis. In general, we can say, I think, that even if White loses a pawn here, that he's going to have epic compensation. So imagine knight d3, pawn takes, bishop a4, moves like b5 and rook c1 look unpleasant. But those are not necessarily lost for Black. It would be great if his king were on d8 or something. But unfortunately, it is not. Yeah. So knight d3 followed by bishop a4 is, I don't see anything epically clear for White after that. And maybe I'm beginning to see something clear after that. There's definitely going to be some problems. And then the other move, of course, is knight a4, after which b5 will body slam your bishop, and then some eventual rook a1 will penetrate to a7. So let's consider knight d3. We're just going to assume that rook g2 doesn't work. Maybe that's a wrong assumption, but that's the little thing I'm going under now. Knight d3, okay, so goes knight a4. So my sense was that b5 was at the very minimum highly unpleasant. Minimum. So imagine, we might have something better than b5, by the way. But b5, bishop d7, rook h8, rook h8, rook a1. You can check me a couple times, but it doesn't really do anything. I will then take on a7. And it's a big rook. It's a big rook. Big rook over there. maybe the checks could. No, I don't think it's. I don't know. Rook h2 at the end of that. Just play bishop e2. I laugh. I laugh. I laugh at you. Yeah, this looks nasty. Someone said I thought knight c6. That might work too. All right, first we take on h8. Probably has to happen. Gains a little bit of time. Now rook a1. Okay. So Mr. Coast just like, dude, I don't even need to play b5. And this is arguably even better because now there's no knight c5. However, if black plays bishop d7, which I assume he was going to have to do anyway, well, we're still getting a very similar thing after, say, b5. Now, bishop e8, I understand why people do that to themselves sometimes. But as a French player, you know, this is why they laugh at you, you know? This is why they laugh at you. They're like, French, are you kidding me, man? What are you doing to the bishop? What's wrong with you? And in general, I just want to say, you know, there's no such thing as bad bishops. There's just bad players. You know, I'm looking at you guys. I'm looking at you guys. Because this bishop, oh man, in both games, it's really been stinking up the dojo. Let me tell you. Yeah, b5 and rook a7 is looking bad. And this bishop on e8 and the king on f8, it just looks like a mating study, you know? Somebody's getting mated, buddy. Somebody's getting mated. Bad bishops defend good pawns and here a knight on the rim. Well, he's not going to be defending him much if Kostya plays b5. And Kostya's thinking about it and dreaming, does he have even something better than b5? It looks brutalo, my friends. I wouldn't say it's no problem. I guess the way I'd frame it in my idiotic little mind is to say that every opening is black where you have a little less space, which is almost like all of them, will involve a bad piece. Like the Caro-Kann players are like, I don't have a bad light square bishop, but they have a bad queenside knight. That's what they got, right? King's Indian player. King's Indian is a mirror image of the French. They've got their bad dark square bishop, right? So no one is immune. But the French players get the most heat. They get the most heat for their particularly bad bishop. Maybe bishop b5 worked. This seems very plausible. And it's nice that the king, the white king, should be able to bring about his long-term goals of coming over to the queenside. Now, it's still tactical. And in particular, can black gain any drama against the e5 pawn? Now, Proust, he's a pawn grubber. So he's going to be thinking about knight d7, and in his mind, he'll say like, oh, I was winning, dude, I was winning. Because he'll be like, I'll take the pawn on e5, and then I'll take the pawn on f6, and he'll say like, what? I was winning the whole time. In any case, rook h5, in addition to knight d7, are thoughts for the dude. And b6 is also a thought. B6 probably what you want to be thinking about most, because if you do not play b6, you got to worry about ye old rook a8 followed by bishop b5, right? Now, I assume, honestly, that after b6 we're just toast. And one of the many problems is knight c6 can always defend the e-pawn, and there's no way you're ever taking on c6, bro. Let's just say it outright. So we are now looking at death. It's been death for a while, honestly, but now at least I'm beginning to see a very concrete domination here. So knight c6 followed by rook a8 looks very tough to meet. I'm assuming that rook a8 can be played immediately as well. Now, the challenge will be, A, can we win the pawn on b6? And B, how do we get our bishop on d3 into the action? we still need to like bring it in for the coup de grace. The coup de grace. All right, rook c7 first. Probably fine. I'm not sure I get it. But I don't know if I need to get it. So for example, if rook h5, knight c6, I really don't see how you can grab that pawn. Though rook c7, maybe I'm missing, maybe his idea is to play, I don't know what his idea is, honestly. I don't get rook c7. Maybe he's got an evil notion, actually, if rook takes c5. Maybe that is his evil notion. So let's just imagine, rook h5, rook c5. Pawn takes b6. Might work. It might work, dude. Rook c7 might have been a real dirty tricker. Rook c5. Does it win on L spot? Oh, it looks tasty. Rook c5, bc, b6. We'll have to give Kostya some credit if this works. Liquid Marine, I think he's dreaming about it, buddy. He didn't want to wait around and do Jesse's slow maneuvering BS. He wanted to win. That's why he's winning the tournaments, man. That's why he's winning. Rook c5, buddy. I don't think there's any way. I don't see any way to save your skin. Prusy Prus. King f8. That's what you deserve, Prus, after playing King f8. Jeez, Malise, look at that thing. Look at this monstrosity. Rook c5, Kostya. Kost, do it, buddy. End this fool. End this fool. Oh, he did it. Proust had pre-moved it. He had even pre-moved BC. He knew it was coming. Yeah, that was evil, man. Rook c7, that was a good... Even if there was some way for black to defend it, it was like... I mean, for example, knight d7 could have been played, which I think he probably had to do anyway. Anyways, this is over. B7, B7, rook B1, knight B3. Good night. It's literally a good night. Yep. End game. That's a nice, I like that. Mr. Art Brains. Mr. Art Brains. Knight B5. Seems like it works just as well. All right, beautiful game. Beautiful. Okay.
I thought b4 was a really great move.
It's good, yeah?
B4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hadn't planned for it. And it seemed really good to me.
All right, you guys, I'm going to invite you to a board so you guys can make moves, do whatever you like. And what I'll do is I'll introduce the game and talk a little bit about the dynamics. I'll try to say it succinctly because I talked a little bit about it already in chat, but it'll give you guys the chance to respond. So, I had this game recently against a very strong FM, this kid, Evan Park, and I could tell he was very theoretical, very tactical. And he even got to this position with 0 time. So he knew about, in particular, this move, which in the pre-computer days was not the favored thing for GMs, but the computer likes it. So he had kind of, like a lot of these kids, he just kind of memorized the computer line. Now, let's think about it. Why did the old timers not like this as much as, say, just queen takes b6 directly? Because they feared from this position either f6 or g5. Mm-hmm. And the computer sees that it's not so easy to achieve. So, for example, in this position, if f6, ef, gf, castles with rook he1 coming, and as far as I can tell, white has a nice advantage. Okay, so I played knight c5.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of that in our first game when Kostya played f5, whether or not I should take on f6 or not, which is similar to right here.
I thought you played it really well. I was kicking myself for not just playing f6 then, based on how the game went, to at least take on e5, maybe get a different structure.
So, okay, let me say the dynamics that I think are important. So, you guys mentioned space, obviously. And the thing about it that I really want to stress, I was stressing in chat, is the key to white's advantage is not just this bishop being potentially bad. By the way, it's got 6 squares right now, and this bishop has 10. So it's definitely a better piece. But also that the king, it's really important to understand that the king is crimped by the pawn. And sometimes the king might be useful on e7, but at the moment he has just far less mobility than the white king. And that brings us to the broader theme, which is, hey, the dark squares can be used by white. So I think if white's going to win this game, he needs to be thinking about dark squares both on the queen side and the king side. And you saying like, okay, the king's better.
Yeah.
The other dynamic that I said I think is important that you guys didn't mention is it's still a French. So the pawns are pointing this way. That's my side of the board. And it's going to be easier for me to do stuff there. Neither of you guys really tried to do anything on that queen side.
Yeah, Jesse, the chat is saying that something's off with Kosti and my sound. Do you have any?
With your
I don't
sound.
know, David. Maybe you could try headphones. People
Me?
are talking about an echo. Yeah.
Yeah, before it was working. I don't know.
Or maybe Jesse, you could try headphones if you don't have any.
All right, I'm on headphones.
All right. How about now? Does it work, everybody? Are we talking? I don't know what's wrong
So-
with it. Okay, my audio levels or whatever look fine. You guys have seemed fine too. Okay, let's see. So here we go. Kind of like if you imagine two bishops, a two-bishop ending with a good bishop and a bad bishop. If you trade your good bishop, then your bad bishop will be eminently hosed. So it's really important to see that black can really never trade the knight. And for example, in Kostia's game with f5, I thought the real problem there was the only reason f5 might work out is knight e4 at some point, and you just never want to do it. You just never want to do it. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to say was interesting, 2 things were interesting about this game that I wanted to show. First, when I analyzed it by myself, it was very hard for me to know. I tried all kinds of things for white. It was very difficult for me to come up with a conception. I think I have a general conception, but how to do it, I don't know. And I do know what black's next, let's say 5 moves are. Maybe 6, depending on how it goes for white. So white's play is actually very difficult. It's also interesting to me because I'm trying with the coach to not be afraid of positions where I think I'm either a little bit worse or the computer says I'm worse. And just saying to yourself, first, you can deal with it. And second of all, like, it doesn't matter that much. It really doesn't matter that much because play is going to happen. Mistakes are going to be made. Okay. Why don't I do this? I'll show you guys this game I played. It'll go quickly. And then if we want, we can look at you guys' games. The guy.
I just know, Jesse, like I've looked in the database at positions like this one, right? Like I've researched various variations of classical French. And when I look for games over 2,600 FIDE, there are 0 black wins, right?
Oh, I disagree. You can look at this database. There's loads of black wins.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very difficult for white. All right, so here we go. White's move is controversial, but I have a feeling, and I haven't looked at it with the computer yet, but I have a feeling the computer doesn't mind it. He plays h4. And the good news there for him is now he has to worry much less about any kind of g5 stuff. By the way, there's some fascinating variations for black. At some point to Benko gambit it with g5, h6. And sometimes even h5, h4, and then g5. And h5 in general is something that black is going to want, is just going to do. It's going to be, and it's very difficult. And one of the things actually I want to stress that I think, mild critique on the way you guys presented it, that I think is really important is that yes, f5 is this break, but it comes at a massive cost for white because it activates black's bishop, activates black's king, and makes e5 weak. So unless there's something immediately tactical after f5, it's almost like, nah, not sure you want it, you know? Okay, so here we go. h4. By the way, the kid, like a little bit like myself, was at a loss about what to do. Just at a loss. You guys were a little bit, I could tell, almost, let me just say, you guys' initial pessimism at black showed through in the moves, because you guys were just kind of going back and forth, knight a4, blah, blah, blah.
No, yeah, I did not like black's position here. I find it very unpleasant. One of the reasons I gave up the French, so I wouldn't have to see endgames like this anymore.
So at this point, I'm going to say black is at least totally equal. And psychologically, I think I'm better than equal because I now have shut down the king side, and I at least can do stuff on the queen side. So boom, boom. A6 has an interesting idea of someday maybe playing bishop b5. Here's a move I might end up criticizing. I played this move just because it's a move looks active. Maybe it's not so bad, but also there's other ideas like I could have played b5 immediately and then thought about bishop c8. Excuse me, bishop c8, bishop b7.
Can we inquire what white's doing? They just completely got blockaded on the king side, and now
Dude,
I don't see any more plans for them.
I want to tell you, it is not easy. Even if we look at other moves, like I think you played g3. If I play h5, what is it? What is it that you want to do?
Eventually h3, g4.
Because see, when you play h3, g4, I just need to play rook h6. And then what are you going to do? Because then I'm threatening hg and rook over.
Okay, rook h6 is a cool move. That's definitely
Right? That was
Interesting idea.
available in you guys'
Yeah,
games too.
I thought of rook h6 in the second game.
In any case, by the way, I do think h4 is inaccurate, especially because now it is unclear. I liked his next move, a3. There's nothing wrong with it anyway. b3, I thought that was okay. And actually, it's kind of cool that there's an idea in this game that played out in your game, is that if white achieves a4, that's definitely a bonus. So I need to grab the space. I want to threaten b4. I do it. And that was a huge achievement, that I get the pawn on the dark squares. Now, he wants to play some kind of g4. I'm going to make it unpleasant for him. Now the rook can go back. Now the bishop is getting more active. I put the bishop where it wants. Now I think I'm clearly better. And now I think I'm winning. But here it's interesting because now we get the tactical phase of the game. It always happens. There's a strategic and then a tactical phase. d4. And now it's all over.
Woo.
He took. I took here and he resigned. So it was an interesting game to me psychologically more than anything to say, if you do Van Perlo's endgame tactics and you study the endgame a little bit, you could. This kid is highly talented. He's going to be a GM for sure. I mean, you look at his games and his knowledge of theory and tactical skill, it's through the roof. But he didn't know what to do here, you know? And honestly, I think it's not easy for white. One of the things I would said, I think I already said a little bit, but I think it's key for white long-term to say it's the dark squares and it's my king penetrating somehow on those dark squares where maybe I can do something against black. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to let you guys decide. Is there one of your games that you want to look at or you want to leave it here? What would you guys like to do?
I mean, we might have one or two questions from our games that we could ask you and see if you have input on.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about we start with the second one, just because I have that up.
Yeah.
And grab that PGN. And I will
Yeah,
just...
because I want to ask about, once we had the H5 versus G4 tension, there was some position where I was thinking about rook H6. Oh, I remember why I didn't do it, Jesse. I didn't do it because, and the move I played there instead was G6, and my fear was that if I played rook H6, Kosi would play G5, rook H8, G6.
Okay, well, yeah, we can look.
So that's what I wanted. Yeah, that's the number one thing maybe I want to
So,
ask you what you think of.
by the way, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I really don't know what White's best move is.
What if white starts with G4? Because this was the main thing.
G4, I think, is totally plausible. And then on H5,
Let's say H3.
and then rook H6.
So then David's at like.
And I looked at this, and one of the weird things about this position is, why does this help White? And now you've kind of activated my king.
I mean, the reason that it would help White would be the G file. I'm not saying it does. I was scared off of it, obviously. So, but maybe I was wrong to be. But
I don't know. I think Black can do a lot of different things. I actually looked at this in my own analysis. And I have a feeling when we look in the database, this will be one of the things that's actually happened. But I couldn't find any advantage for White after, say, F5.
So now, yeah, I would still be terrified as Black of, I guess, rook G1 to G5.
Okay, but bear in mind now my bishop...
Maybe H4 as well.
Maybe,
Let's
but
nail
my
that guy
bishop,
down,
my
or our
bishop has
can
a,
get him later.
my bishop's not doing something.
Your bishop's going to go to E8, right?
At some point,
H6.
yeah. It'll be very difficult
I
for
think
you.
white should take personally off the side.
Maybe he should. Maybe he should. And I looked at that too, and I was like, I don't know who's better. And I have two moves: king takes and pawn takes. And the danger, of course, is now my king is beautiful. Now my king he's a real dude now. He's a real dude. We can assume this one maybe.
I would think like rook A1.
Well, first of all, I might play knight takes bishop and king takes pawn, first of all.
Okay, yeah, that's something to think about. Yeah, let's say rook G1 then.
It's got to be said that E5 is a move for me.
Wait. Hang on. I think we can go rook AE1.
Okay.
Let him take that pawn if he wants to. I think we have to be very, very precise. I'll say that.
Yeah. Do you want to take on E6 at the end, or?
Yeah, I want to take on E6, and then if he trades and plays king F7, I'm going to double rooks. And if he plays rook E8, I'll trade both rooks, king E3, king E7, king D4, king D6, play F5. And the king and pawn ending.
Just king F5 as well, instead of king F7?
Yeah, there is. Then I get the rook to the 7th rank.
But why would I take on E6 with the bishop?
I don't know, because I'm threatening rook G1 check and taking G7 because your king's a little exposed. We'll see. I mean, that's just I didn't calculate every line, but I checked one line, right? Which is, am I letting Black off the hook by trading off the bishop?
All right, I don't know if I want to take, but let's just see what your intention is here.
Yeah, I was going to take. Yeah.
Now the king is going to be a problem with bishop F5 later.
All right.
Now
So
maybe
knight C7. There's bishop F5 check. Huh?
or F7. I don't know which way to go yet.
Okay. How about knight takes G7? A little Van Perlo.
That's
Throw
right.
in a little Van Perlo.
I don't know how your knight's getting out.
Yeah.
I've got no idea.
Yeah,
know.
we might be
I don't know how it's getting out, buddy, but yeah.
rook H7.
No, I don't think
Yeah.
this is much. Let's look at the game. Knight A4, no good. You need to play something like A6 or H5.
Okay.
H5 in general is always useful for black.
Sure.
And one cool thing about h5 is it kind of like even, I don't know if I want to call it a threat, but h4 is just a nice expansion move. And if white dilly-dallies, then at any point g5, fg, h6 becomes interesting. So I thought this was poor, and now white should definitely consider a4 because that's just stopping black's queenside expansion is prophylaxis, good prophylaxis.
Is there a reason I have to do it right this move, or?
Well, maybe not, but a6, b5 is on the agenda for black, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, here you could definitely consider a6.
Yeah, maybe I should have.
But then I'd probably go a4.
It's possible that then black can play b5.
We're gonna think about it, and if we decide against it, we're gonna play b6.
Uh-huh.
But we're definitely gonna think about it, yeah. So, for example, here, and I guess you got to think about taking.
Right.
And
knight
now
e3.
we just take here. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, you can even do it.
Who's better and why? Who's better and why?
I don't know, I still take white, like rook a1.
b4.
Yeah. No, I get your point, but yeah, I'd still take white, you know.
It looks pretty close now.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
And let's just say that's one of the reasons that the rook should probably stay on, like a1, there's uses for the rook on a1. It's a little bit surprising. Also here, if a6, you have tricky ways of maybe now threatening bishop b5 because the a2 pawn is unguarded.
Uh-huh.
Right? So if you play like this move, or h4 or h3, I don't know, let's just say, just as an example, then we have to at least calculate whether I can get away with that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, I thought there was another critical or instructive moment here.
Okay, so dilly-dallying was not right.
Yeah, there was some dilly-dallying. Kind of like in my game, the rook c8 might just be a show move, right? Because especially when you haven't gained any space now, I don't know what it's doing.
Yeah, I was just waiting around.
So if you wanted to, you could play, if you're really terrified of
I
g4,
could play rook h6
you
now.
could play
maybe.
rook h6 now.
Yeah.
So in any case, we had a question, what would the valuation here be? And I said in chat too, I was like, g5 would be the only thing I think to worry about.
It was the only thing I worried about, so at least...
So here at least if f5, the rook is on e1, which is a favorable comparison to the last time.
Yeah.
But I still got big questions, like why is black worse here? I don't. I'm just gonna take with the pawn just because that's more normal.
Yeah.
And I take here.
Right.
Bishop e8 next. I don't know.
Yeah. Tuck that bishop on f7. Defend your pawns.
Or king f7 too. I might not even need to play bishop e8. I'm just saying I don't know what white's doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So rook hg1.
Right now.
Yeah, right now.
And what do you want to do?
I don't know. Depends what you do. But in some case, I might want to play f5 next.
Maybe. I don't get it.
Maybe h4?
Yeah, but we have to think if we've got an eventual breakthrough. So that breakthrough would probably be f5. And
I could take both ways. I can take both ways.
F5 g takes f looks really suspicious.
Well, I'm gonna park my bishop.
On f7,
Yeah,
and then on knight f5 check, you have king f8,
something like that.
and then rook f7, knight b6.
Okay, so let's just say the
Yeah,
obvious.
I mean, I gotta go knight f5 if I'm doing anything.
let's say the obvious and say, obviously I could do anything here. I can play EF and GF. I think GF's going to work out too. But in any case, G6 was, there's a number of moves that both you guys played, which seemed like pessimistic, like I'm going to assume the position kind of moves.
Yeah.
And G6 was one of them.
Yeah, like I wanted to play rook h6, and I was scared of g5, g6, but I didn't go very deeply into it, right? I was just kind of like, ooh, like that's going to do something. And it's sort of like assuming that if something happens, it's bad for me, right? Like,
Now, by the way, I think here maybe f5 is a thought for white, because here then there's the question: does rook h6 or rook h7 help black?
right.
And
Yeah,
I wasn't
still
sure.
think I would have to go here.
I wasn't sure about what was going on. Like I said, whenever you press f5, there's a lot of disadvantages to the move.
Yeah. But yeah, basically I thought at this point that I was in danger to f5. So why don't you try it? That's why I didn't play rook h6 here.
Okay. Let's take.
Okay. G takes. Okay.
Nah, we're fine.
Well, bishop takes.
Hang on, there's no world in which you're equal here. There's different kinds of how bad black is, but there's no world where black's equal here.
Really? My bishop is now free. My rook on
but
h6 is open.
You've got an extra pawn island,
Well,
and white's rook on the f file is good. You're at minimum minus 0.21 at minimum.
okay. I'm just gonna
best case
play.
scenario for
I'm
black.
just play one move. There, I think I have more. I have 96. I have 94. They both look good. 94. I don't know. I guess you got to take it.
I mean, I've been dreaming of taking it. I'll take it.
Let's take it.
Yeah. Why is white better here? Now maybe.
So let's say maybe rook f4.
Maybe rook f4, but I have e3 after rook f4, so maybe rook e1.
I kind of like c4. to keep
Why
the
can't
rook out.
why can't the king just take the pawn if you go to e3?
Well, rook c3, and then I take on h3.
I also think king e3, rook c3, king takes e4, bishop c6 is kind of annoying for white because we don't really want to trade the bishop.
Right, and the c2 pawn's dead at the end there. It's really good.
Yeah, that's why I like c4 here. I would think that's very annoying.
Ooh.
Maybe rook
Love it.
c5 though.
Yeah, rook c5 looks good.
c5.
No, I thought I'll tell you what, I might take this 94 back. It would depend on this position for me, because I'm not exactly sure
Okay.
yet about my counterplay.
Yeah.
But I think I have. But now the bishop is great. So it's one of the things I was telling Chad is black should always be looking to sack a pawn for the sake of the bishop. And so this is I might have better than 94, but this looks like the kind of thing we're talking about, with maybe oh yeah, now I can go to the rook endgame 2 with bishop c6 if I want to. But rook
This rook
g3
endgame
or
might
rook
be
g2 is totally
less
plausible.
convinced. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this would be, this is the dream for black. The e pawn is weak. I have a bunch of moves. My bishop's out. Both of the red rooks are active. I can play.
All right, take back bishop f5 and take with the knight.
Okay, I think it's going to be similar. We take.
Mm-hmm.
And now again, I have knight e4 check or rook g8. Great. Knight e6 is also a good move. Nothing wrong with my position after knight e6.
What do you mean? You're in the Fisher endgame.
But I've got weaknesses. I've got weaknesses to play with. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the game, I was very surprised by bishop c6 because I actually thought in this position if I just play f5, like, yeah, that one didn't seem super clear to me.
Right, and so let's say this, with black playing HG, that was a big concession to white, because then we've given white the tension on the H file. Now I definitely liked white, and black needs a move now. That's part of the
Yeah,
problem.
I was expecting any kind of
Maybe
winning move, like
maybe
B6
B6,
or
maybe
B6,
B6.
sure.
Just to stop A5.
Mm-hmm.
I do think white's better there, but yeah, it's going to be more of a maneuvering game. And then, David, I still thought you were alive, by the way, here, and I didn't like King F8 at all, because you just like self-mated yourself, bro. If you had played King D8,
D8.
it's a lot more tense, I felt.
Right.
The king is also necessary for helping fight for the queen side.
But here, maybe
Right.
I have rook FG1.
That's what I was afraid of. I was afraid of Kostya playing like rook G7.
Okay, I'm just going to do this one first and see what happens.
Yeah.
So not rook F1, G1, right? Not rook FG1. I don't know what white. Maybe there's a way for white to do this,
Maybe I
but
gotta try B4 again. I don't know.
maybe B4. Yeah. This is much better though for black in that now if the rook comes to A7, we can play King C7.
Yeah, we can
Right.
try and keep the game going quite a bit longer.
But Costa, we are gonna say, dude, B4. Oh, chat loved that, dude. Chat
Yeah.
loved rook C7. That was a beaut. Yeah, punish this.
That's
fool.
good to hear because I was unhappy with how I played it. I actually really wanted to take on C6 originally. I just
thought
kinda
you would, for
talked
sure.
myself out of it. Yeah, I thought this was simpler afterwards.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Because I think you got it. I don't know. Very complicated.
Whoever in chat said knight takes C6, there was a guy. We're gonna give him credit. Do I remember his name? No, but there was somebody who said knight takes C6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the reason I did it was because, like, if it didn't work out, then you guys would make fun of me for trading off the bad bishop. Whereas if this doesn't work out, at least I followed normal principles.
Well,
You can't
let's just
think
see.
about them while you play, Ghost. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you were worried about this little check, right?
Not really. I thought white is doing really well here. I'll just go king e3.
Yeah.
And then check.
Knight b2. Oh.
I was just gonna advance, let's say, this way. Maybe king f4 much. No, then there's a fourth rank check. Yeah.
And then the whole time I'm like, David, why'd you mate yourself back there? Even the chat was like, David, why'd you mate yourself, buddy?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Knight b2 here.
It's a sad business
knight
after
B2.
rook a7, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have to run out to h7. The white rook can go to f8, king g6, rook check, king f5, rook g7. That's what I was looking at.
All right. So let me do this. I'm going to stock Hello Kostya. Stock, please. And this way I can grab his game and I'll come right back.
Yeah.
So we're going to look
What I
at,
was thinking.
we'll look briefly at the first one. I will grab said business. Oh, it takes forever. And L share, please. L share, please. Pop, pop. Yeah, there's a couple instructive moves here too. So will it remember that I'm in live chess? Ooh, it does not remember. Oh, it is. It does remember. Okay, great. So here we go. We're going to be in the same analysis board. I'm just going to import the moves. G3. I think G3, definitely one of the contenders. Just to stabilize and because it kind of like keeps h3, g4 in reserve, and so if black plays h5, which I assume is black's best move here, either h5 or a6, when black plays h5, h4, if h4, we can at least push past, right? Mm-hmm. Also, g3 makes the Benko gambit ideas of g5, h6 a little bit harder to do, I think. Mm-hmm. So it just kind of controls, and the dark squares, like that's aesthetically, I like that it controls the dark squares. So rook ac8, I didn't like. It's unclear what it does. So right, either a6 or h5. And I despised this move, Kostya.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
I think he did too.
Let me try to explain why I don't like it, because I think what you're doing is you're saying to yourself, later I get to play knight e4. And the bummer there is, this is where I really think grounding yourself in the dynamics is really important, because you have to say to yourself, I can never trade the knight. It's like that's the one thing. Unless the position transforms and we get f5 and our bishop gets free like in the last one, we cannot trade the knight. Mm-hmm. So g4 natural, sad, but I guess I don't know what else to do. Good move, sad, but I guess.
Oh, Jesse, I think my only question about this game we already passed, which was when he played f5, like, should I consider taking en passant?
Well, you're maybe no.
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 Because I knew the plan that I did, and I knew that this would be good for me. And if I took on f6, I was less confident, so I went with what I knew.
Okay, fair enough. I thought here, by the way, it's a difficult moment here for the guy, for our guy. This is one of the positions I really felt Kostya should be thinking at some point of sacking a pawn to try to get the bishop active. Mm-hmm. And knight e4, I felt, David, that since you're going to play king e3 anyway, you should not take the thing.
Right. I agree. King e3 is the move I would generally prefer to play. But then I was calculating king e3, g5 in this position.
Okay, as long as you were worried about something. I don't think g5 brings it, but as long as you were worried about something.
Yep. I prefer to keep that tension,
mm-hmm.
but I did know that trading was good for me. And so when I wasn't sure about king e3, g5, I was like, well, I was going to take the knight anyway at some point. I'm not like kidding anybody.
Right. So here Kostya assumed the position, and let's try to mix it up a little bit with GH.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, GH, I guess I didn't like, just GF, right?
Oh, I was going to play rook h5.
Wow.
So on GF, we at least have some hopes. I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on, but we have hopes now. Now, we could also play... No, we can't play rook g1. Rook g1, by the way, we cannot do because of f6 check.
Let's say take and rook h5.
Okay, it's got to be the question. Okay. Maybe it's just devastating. It looks honestly pretty bad, doesn't it?
Looks like you have to allow rook h7 to keep the rook active. This looks pretty good. I think what I was going to do was even better. But maybe this is better.
All I know is black has to not assume the position. So I was like, the other one we could be looking at is sacking a pawn somehow like this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because it's, if we get some rook endgame where like you take on e4 and then I force you to take the bishop, then I have a chance.
But I'm in no rush to take that pawn, so I go rook g4.
Yeah, well,
I trade and take h5.
Yeah, so all I know is we have hope. Am I lost? Maybe. But I got some hope.
h6. I'm feeling ready to play f5 and e6 for white.
Good.
And then just, knight f5, knight back to d4, bring the king up to e5.
Well, maybe. I mean, it's obviously unpleasant. I'm not doubting
I
it.
just try and overprotect the e6 pawn.
And maybe if I'm trying to be really clever, I do like check the miserable king. Force
Right,
this
just to
thing.
force me to take it and then go back. Yeah, that might help you a little bit.
Now, there's all kinds of ways to dominate. Maybe c4 so that the bishop cannot go here. So, for
Right.
example, here, and you
Yeah.
just, well, but now you do have to worry about that stuff. So it's not super simple, but that would be an idea. Oh, shit, that would be an idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, this thing looked terrible, dude. This thing looked
Yeah.
miserable.
I don't know. I think, starting from f5, just...
At this point, too, I was telling Chad, it's not just the bishop anymore. It's your rooks, dog.
No.
Should I have taken on f5 or did it not matter?
I thought you could do even g5 if you wanted to.
Okay.
G5 would be just to make sure Kostya never gets to play G5 himself, though I think you're probably right in assuming that he can't ever really do it,
Yeah.
Sorry, what if
And I like that one. That was cool.
What if I did play g5, let's say, back here?
Definitely something you should be thinking about, yeah. Kostya, you missed that move, buddy. What are you doing?
I saw it after I moved.
This is why I was telling Chat too. I was like, David, maybe you should play G5 just so he doesn't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought about g5 from Kostya. I thought I had something here, but it's not making sense to me anymore.
No, this G5 was very strong, Kostya. You had your chance, dude.
Oh, shit.
It's not clear. It's not clear even what's happening anymore, right?
Yeah.
Wait,
I don't
how
know.
about this? How about this? Check to the miserable king. That's not check. This is my check to the miserable king. Let's just assume that rook g7 has to happen. Let's assume for a second. So snippos, hippos, and crippos.
I think you needed to not trade that rook.
I'm trying to help you, buddy. You're
I
the
know,
you're
but-
you're the
I
one
think
that
you've
did
been
this to yourself.
I think you've been too generous to me just now by trading Kostya's rook. Because the doubled rooks on the G file were...
Okay, but
Where his trick.
okay. So, first of all, this looks reasonable. This looks still pretty interesting for
This
white.
looks still nice, for white.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just assuming that worst case scenario, white has got this. I don't know. What do you want to do? King D8 or something
D8.
nasty?
King D8, yeah. He needs to win the pawn on G4 with his rooks.
I'm just saying that looks nasty, man.
That is a move. Okay, maybe King E8
Maybe
instead of King D8.
Okay, fine. So wait, King E8. Okay, at the very least, it's more of a challenge, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why I didn't do this.
Okay, my friends, that was Endgame Sensei. I think I'm going to do more analysis of this. Actually, I will say Monday morning early, I'm going to come on and talk about my notes to the game, probably with my student James Altucher. And then I'm going to show it to the coach. And then usually after the coach, I make chess.com really mad because then I use a chess-based window, but I've used the chess-based window because I don't know how to use the powerful computer other than using the chess-based application. Anyways, that will usually be Monday afternoon that I'll come on and do that. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Endgame Sensei concludes. We will be back probably next week with another position where I torment these two hapless IMs.